I hope everyone is doing good and taking good care of themselves. And today is the day. Finally, I'm touching, an interesting topic. I personally had a lot of experiences, since childhood, and I was not getting, someone, who is into this field. I mean, researching this topic and talking about it. I mean, someone who has transitioned from, the worldly life and work and everything, and then all of a sudden, got into this. And trust me, he's an expert. So my guest tonight is Craig Campobasso, an Emmy-nominated casting director and multiple award-winning filmmaker whose career spans over 3 decades in Hollywood, with credits on iconic films like Dune, Conan the Destroyer, that was my favorite back then, and Total Recall. Beyond Hollywood, Craig is celebrated author of the Extraterrestrial Species Almanac and the UFO Hotspot Compendium. His groundbreaking new documentary visually brings to life 82 extraterrestrial species from his best-selling almanac. Craig has appeared on Ancient Aliens, Coast to Coast AM, Gaia TV, and more. And I'm really honored to have him with us tonight. Craig, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
So, sure. Craig, you've had a fascinating career arc. I mean, from Hollywood casting director to best-selling author and now a documentary filmmaker. I'm really curious to know, what was the turning point that led you from the world of entertainment into, exploring extraterrestrial life and consciousness?
Well, I'll give you a sort of broad spectrum because I do believe that it was predestined, and I think you and your listeners will believe it when I finish the story, because it's like when I made all the connections just not that long ago in 2019, it all made perfect sense. But ever since I was a little boy, I always wanted to be in the film business. It just fascinated me. So one of my very first jobs right out of high school was working on David Lynch's Dune and Conan the Destroyer at the same time, because it was the same producers. And I worked on especially Dune for 4 years. So I learned a lot about the giant filmmaking process. When I left there, I went and started my casting career on Steven Spielberg's Amazing Stories, and became an associate casting director there for 1.5 years. And then I went back to the De Laurentiis family and started casting their films. And when I was 26 years old, I had a major spiritual awakening. Now, I didn't know what that was. My parents were not religious, although my mother said she felt I should have some kind of upbringing in that. So I did go to parochial school for 3 years, and I was really taught well by the nuns, 2 nuns and 1 regular teacher who was there. But then I begged my mom and dad just to go to regular school so I could be with all my friends, and so they let me. But my parents were spiritual; they weren't religious, so that sort of also rubbed off on me. But although I look at all religion now and spirituality as all being one big part of the whole thing, as long as unconditional love is the main respect, right? So
Mhm.
all of a sudden, the the boy, the kid, the young adult, me, who never thought about anything out there in the universe, who was not into Star Trek, who was not into sci-fi, at age 26 began wondering what was out there in the great big universe. And I was actually woken up by three master teachers. I call them universal master teachers, and they visited me and appeared to me in my bedroom in the middle of the night in astral form for about a period of 2 years, until they woke me up and said that you came here to be a writer, came here to write about cosmic things. And so the main teacher said, I want you to sit down. I want you to write and write and write. Don't stop. Don't edit. Write until you can write no more. Of course, I had no idea what automatic writing was. I had no idea what channeling was. All I knew is at that time I lived in a little small one bedroom apartment. My desk was my kitchen table. I had an old IBM electric typewriter, but I would handwrite everything out. And all I knew is I could see, I had three portals in my little apartment. I could see the energy forms coming down. I could see them, feel them standing behind me, and my body would ring with chills for 15 minutes until I started to raise more and more over time to their vibrations, right? So
Mhm.
this is where my book series, The Autobiography of an Extraterrestrial Saga, emerged from.
Mhm.
Now, my book agent at the time, um, many years later, he called me and he said, "Look, you know, I love UFOs and all of that." He says, I have just brokered a deal between MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, and Red Will Weiser Books as an imprint. And I want you to write the first book. And he said, I have the name of that book, called The Extraterrestrial Species Almanac. And I said, oh, I could totally write that book, because I have been studying contactee cases of people all over the world who were having face-to-face contact with extraterrestrials, and they were given lots of information about why they came, specific things that they needed to accomplish here, how long would they be here. Some stayed for a very long time. Some integrated into our society and took jobs so they could feel what it was like, because you have to remember, they're fully conscious. We are dualistic. Total big
Mhm.
difference in consciousness, right? So they don't really
Mhm.
understand dualism unless they're in the thick of it, right? So,
Mhm.
so I went to all of my contacts and everything. I had to come up with this. I had come up with over 120 some races, but I I had to come in under 300 pages, and I was a fan of Paul Hellyer, who was the former Canadian Minister of Defense, who spoke openly about the amount of extraterrestrial races he knew that were visiting the planet. And that changed over the years. And before he passed, he said he knew of 82 races. And I thought, wow, let me see if I can squeeze 82 races into the book and honor him. And I was just able to squeeze that in, right? So now it's to that early 2019. I'm writing the book, and I get this phone call from a woman in Canada. She said, I'm your cousin on your mother's father's side, I think fourth or fifth cousin. She said, I'm a real genealogist and I'm looking for this information. So we struck up a conversation. And I said, well, I said, do you think you could find my biological father? I said, my mother told me when I was 12 that my father, that she married when I was 1, was my stepfather. And of course, I've never only ever looked at him as my father. And I feel even strange calling him a stepfather because that's not what he was. He was my father. But I wanted to know the roots of who the biological father was. And all I had was a name. I gave it to her. She found him. She called me and said, I'm sorry to say he passed away in 2006. And this is where he's buried. It's a forest lawn across from Warner Brothers. I said, well, I'm going down there tomorrow morning. I went down there, went to the front desk, said, can you give me the name of the person that called when they brought Fred in,
Mhm.
into the cemetery here? And she goes, well, let me look. And she goes, yes, I do. And the gentleman had a different last name. Looked him up on the internet. He lived around the corner from me. At that time, he was a 74-year-old man. Wrote him a letter. 2 days later, his son called and said, you know, usually you would ignore something like this, and I said, well, why? I said, was your father's friends with my biological father? And he said, no, it's actually his half brother. And I said, oh, so you're like my cousin? And he goes, yeah. He goes, but the weird thing is you look just like him. So long story short, I go and I meet with my uncle, and my uncle has 3 boys. So I met with that son, and we have this 3-hour long dinner. And my uncle his face is so happy that he has a part of his brother on the planet, and he can't take his eyes off me because he says your height, your look, everything is literally identical. And I said, well, tell me about him. And so he was telling me about him, and he said, he always wanted to be in the Air Force. He loved flying he wanted to fly airplanes. And he begged my mother to sign a piece of paper for him to go into the Air Guard before he was 18. Then when he was 18, they put him in the Air Force. And then he said, oh, and by the way, he was in Project Blue Book.
Oh,
I
interesting.
went like right now, even my whole body has chills. And I'm like, well, I'm thinking, I write books. I've written 2 books for MUFON, but I'm writing a MUFON book, which is the public's access to UFOs. And he was working for
Mhm.
Blue Book, which was the government's, clandestine uh, organization. And then he continued, and he said, he moved up the ladder there very quickly, and then he just decided he didn't want to be there anymore. He came home, and he said he ultimately became the head of construction for film and TV at Warner Brothers. And I thought, oh my God, I'm in the film business. He was in the film business.
Wow.
He was dealing with UFOs and extraterrestrials like
Mhm.
dealing with UFOs and extraterrestrials. And of course, you just say it's in the DNA. It is in the DNA. So that's why I really feel that it was destined. I love both. And it's a fascinating journey. So I know I took a long way around to tell that story, but feel free to
No,
ask
it's
any
perfect.
of the
Yeah.
questions.
Mhm. Craig, in my personal experience, I have seen, I have observed two kind of things, when
Yeah.
we look at spirituality, consciousness, paleo contact and, paranormal and, UFO. I have seen, there is one set, individuals whose parents are also psychic and medium, and they have those abilities and it passes on. The other set that I have observed is a traumatic event or exposure to psychedelic or anesthesia that triggers, that increases their porosity. And that's how they are able to see, connect, communicate. I hope that makes sense. These are the two, varieties and variations that I have observed. I would want to know, I mean, you have already, said that your dad was, I mean, your biological dad was on that path as well. I mean, finding out these things, and he was doing the similar thing that you are into. I would want to know, was this the only reason why you became a host, I mean, fostering these communications and experiences? Or was there something else? Was there any traumatic event attached? Or, I mean, how did you develop these abilities? Or it was just like, one fine day it started
Well,
happening?
I believe that I know that I am a star seed, right? And the autobiography of an extraterrestrial saga book series is about a Pleiadian man named Tehran, and he is the head of the Starseed program at Melchizedek, which all of the star seeds are coming into Earth. So he trains them. He tells them what to expect. They're told on what timeline that they have to raise their consciousness to help raise up the collective, etc. But my journey started when I was a boy, and I find this with many contactees and some abductees. I'm not an abductee at all. I consider
Mhm.
myself a contactee, although I have never met any of them in the flesh. I meet them what I call the mind internet. When I meditate, they will
Mhm.
come. You get a click at the back of your neck. It goes, and then boom, they're there, and they will talk to you, or they'll just relay their feelings to you. Um, everything is a different experience. Lots of astral, and sometimes the one master teacher, when I was in my 20s, appeared in the middle of the day, and his soul was so large that it was this wide around, and it went from the floor to the ceiling, and it just did like this.
Wow.
It was all gold, and it had these ovals of prismatic gold. I mean, these were very highly advanced beings. So my experience from there was always with love. But when I was a little boy, I had many experiences. I could see spirit in the room. I could feel it. So I was a little boy that, although my mother wouldn't let me leave the light on, I had a fish tank with a light on, and I made her leave the door open. And I would have to check under my bed because I could feel things around me, right? And I could feel when I laid in bed, I could feel the energies around me. And I still feel that also to this day. But one morning when I was around 10, I woke up and I saw an angel, an astral angel floating in my bedroom. And
Wow.
I of course thought that's when I was going to parochial school, and I immediately thought that maybe it was the spirit of my mother or father. And I ran into their bedroom and I checked them. I remember putting my fingers under their nose to see if they were breathing. And I ran in my sister's room and checked them, and they were fine. And then not long after that, I was taking a bath, and I was just sitting in the bath water, and I was staring into the nozzle. I could see my face. And all of a sudden, this energy came in, pulled my spirit out, pulled it into the center of the universe, opened up the universe. I went inside. And all the questions we ask ourselves much later in life: who am I? Where do I come from? What am I doing? All of those questions went through my mind. And then I went back into my body. And
Wow.
I remember contemplating that and thinking about it, but it was something that I never, ever told my parents about. right? It's
Mhm.
like a lot of these experiences were meant just for you. And I have found, because of doing this work, I speak to lots of people, celebrities included, because of my work. They tell
Mhm.
me of their own UFO experiences. Some of them have hybrid children. Somebody on a big show right now told me that they've been taken up on ships and shown their hybrid children. Um, and that they can actually call in the ships. And he proved it to me by like going outside and calling one in and filming it as well. And so everybody has these little different bits of information. I have a friend that she starts to get dizzy when something's going to happen. Um, I in the beginning, I would know that I was going to have a very super consciousness experience when I noticed something, and I would have a praying mantis sit above my door because it had a ledge. The door frame was made of metal, so it had a ledge this wide, and a praying mantis would stay up there for 3 days. And at the end of those 3 days, I would have some kind of super consciousness experience, right? So
Wow. Mhm.
they're like, everybody has different, different things. Once when I was in Sedona, um, from doing all the writing, I went there to just clear my head, and my head was so focused. And I remember lying on the bed, and I could feel the beings around me working on my head. I could feel the bed indentations actually going down as well, right?
Wow. Mhm.
So when it was over, I opened my eyes and I felt 100% better. And I went and I took a shower. And when I came back into my bedroom, there was a brown praying mantis lying on my pillow.
Oh,
Of
wow.
course, I took a picture of it. I have it
Mhm.
somewhere. So there's all the, everyone has a little bit different. Other people who experience paranormal, if they actually have live wires from the poles behind their house, that's a conduit for paranormal activity, right? So
Mhm.
they can conjure things. And just like in the Poltergeist movie, one of my friends produced that movie. And he said, if I would have known what I know now, I never would have been involved with that movie, because so many things happen to people on the crew, as well as, we know what happened to poor little Heather O'Rourke and the daughter. Um, but that was on Indian burial grounds, and and they did one thing wrong. The director of the second one used real human skeletons in the pool, and and
Oh.
and the actual psychic who was brought on board to guide them through it said, "You can't do that. You can't do that. That's disrespecting the dead." And that's when all of the problems started.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. Mhm.
Yes. Very interesting. But it can be triggered by many things. It can be
Mhm.
triggered by reading one of my books. It can be triggered by, you could just be reading a regular book and there's a word that goes boop. And that was the word that just triggers your mind to start thinking more and more about things, and you start to research it. And I will tell all of your readers, the information is out there. You just have to dig for
True.
it. Yeah.
Craig, you talked about the three teachers. I'm really curious if you could tell us more about those teachers. I mean, what role did they play? I mean, what was, their work, in revealing themselves to? And if you could talk about, who they were really. I mean, were they, aliens, extraterrestrial, or some entity or some interdimensional being? I mean, if you could just,
Yes.
explain that.
Two of them, two of them were from the same place, and one was from a different place. So two of them they're called the Maram IMs, and we live in the seventh super universe within a local universe, right? They live in the first super universe on the first planet that was created, which is where the I am that I am resides. And that is where they come from. So, so they are these vestiges of vast amounts of spirituality and information, because they got me from a clod, as I call it, in 2 years to be wide open to start receiving all of this information. They were clearing the vessel to bring forth this information as well. And these beings have very long, elongated. They're actually in the ET Almanac. You can see them, the Maramayans. They have very elongated heads. They're like 8 feet or taller. They have these Maramayam robes, and throughout these robes are, I don't even know what the word above zillion is, but it's more than zillions of sun cells, which is a cell from all of the suns carried across all of creation. And so they are like these vast ultra computers of information that they can help and assist worlds also in need. Now, I have only met one other person that has had contact with these beings. And interestingly enough, she is also a fellow casting director.
Oh.
Right? So I haven't had anybody come to me and say that they have had experience with them. The third is a human female, blonde haired, very gregarious. She comes from the twin universe of the universe that we're in. And she is also highly intelligent, and she finds duality absolutely fascinating. Right? It's like, and her personality would be sort of like Ellen Chenoweth. Is that her name? The one from Wicked. Is that her name? Am I saying it right? Ellen, is it Chenoweth, or is that a casting director? Let's see. What is? All right, so and sort of the same as, like Ariana Grande, that sweet, fun, loving energy, so gregarious that you cannot help but not love it. Yeah, Kristen Chenoweth. Kristen Chenoweth. Let me pull her up here.
Oh.
Yeah, she reminds me in look and in also personality, that just bubbly, always happy, always brilliant, that kind of thing. So, once they've woken you up, others come and take over, and then they move on, but they do monitor you and see how you're doing in the background as well. And so now I have other guides that are not from here that are fully conscious. Some are fully conscious extraterrestrial beings. Some are created beings as well. And created beings don't have belly buttons. Those are also in the ET Species Almanac and also in the documentary as well of the same name of the book. But I lost my train of thought. What was that saying?
They don't have belly buttons.
Yes,
The
they don't
created
have
beings.
belly buttons because they're born of the Godhead, right? And one of two things can happen. They can be born of the Godhead as a full adult and go right into a mission, right? These are what we would call the angelics. Or they're born as an infant through wombs of light, and then they're given to celestial parents to raise because they would have a different type of mission.
The thing that you mentioned, Craig, I mean, beings without belly button, it reminds me of Thor from Venus. Are you aware of that? I think he had
Right
landed
behind me.
in.
It's
I'm
right
sorry?
behind me. It's right behind me.
Oh, yeah.
I'm the one who owns the book rights to the Valiant Thor story. I made a
Yes,
short
yes.
film. I made a short
Mm-hmm.
film about it, which people can watch on Vimeo, or they
Mm-hmm.
can email me through the website, which I have down here. I have maybe 5 DVDs left of the film. I'll be making the feature film. So I was very good friends with Dr. Frank, who was in constant contact with Valiant Thor. I was good friends with Dr. Frank the last 8 years of his life. And so the project was handed off to me to continue. And with Val Thor's blessing, and also with Dr. Frank's blessing as well. So I was able to write the script, sit with him, having him tell me all these various different stories of him and Valiant Thor and the crew and all of those kinds of amazing experiences. I myself have had experiences with Valiant Thor and the crew, but it's on the inner. And it's also through lucid dream states if they want to come through and tell you something as well. Yeah, that's why I put Valiant Thor in the book under created beings in the ET
Um,
Species Almanac. Yeah.
Craig, what do you think? I mean, what was his, purpose? I mean, when we look at, his interaction with the human species, what was his role or duty or purpose? I mean, why did he come, reveal himself, and interacted with the humans? What do you think was his purpose?
Well, his purpose was in coming to establish with President Eisenhower. He arrived on March 16th, 1957, and they knew he was coming. So there was police cars that went and picked him up, brought him to the Pentagon. This was on a Saturday morning, mind you, not on a busy work day. Brought him to the Pentagon, and then the Secretary of Defense and the Undersecretary put him on. They, along with him and some others, went on the underground train to the White House. And sometime before noon is where Valiant Thor had his first meeting with the Joint Chiefs, other political figures, and President Eisenhower. Richard Nixon was a little late because it was his wife's birthday. So he arrived to the meeting just a tad tardy. And he came with what we call a divine design to eliminate sickness, disease, how to prolong life, but also came to talk about the dangers of atomics and that they really should be moving into free energy, and came with a whole proposal. And so it was decided that he would stay and live at the Pentagon for a period of 3 years. And so they made, there's the Pentagon goes, down, and there's many other floors below the Pentagon. So one floor was apartments. And so he was moved into a Pentagon apartment. They supplied all his clothing as well. And interestingly enough, in the clothing bit, even though in the pictures his suit looks black or dark, it's actually blue. And he never wore anything but a white tie and a white shirt, right? So, anyway, so he was there for 3 years, and he had meetings with Eisenhower and Nixon, Joint Chiefs separately, talking about various things and how the Earth can be helped. But Nixon and Eisenhower were actually for his proposal, and everyone else just wanted his technology, because his technology was organic technology. It was conscious, and they didn't have any of that at that time, right? They only had some of the captured saucers, from Roswell from the 40s and that type of thing. So anyway, towards the end of his tenure there, they all took a vote, and his proposal was denied because they said it would put doctors, nurses, pharmaceutical companies out of business. And so he left on his given date on March 16th, 1960. He went back home for a year. He returned a year later, reconnected with Dr. Frank. He has been here ever since. He's not going to leave until the planet changes over into becoming wholly, fully conscious. So he is here for the long duration. Many people say they have contact with him face to face. From what I understood when Dr. Frank was alive, none of that was happening. So there are people out there. All of a sudden, by the way, since I made the short film, there's now something like 15 books on Amazon saying they're being written by Valiant Thor. And by the way, those books were from the 50s that they just took the author's name on and slapped his name on. So people should beware. I think if you put things into perspective, this is a high seraphim. This is a being of great stature. Why would he be writing books for Earth when he is much busier with other things to help Earth, right? So, but yeah, so that's his story. There's a lot more to his story that will be in the full feature film that I'm working and setting up now. So if there's any millionaires out there listening, please call me, because we're almost all ready to go. I've got about I got a bunch of millions already saved, but this is a big project. This is special effects heavy, because we're going to be on motherships, starships, solar saucers, his craft Victor 1, and half the time up there and half the time down in Washington. So that's it's quite an elaborate feat.
Craig, I had been following, the work of Dr. Stephen Greer, Linda Moulton, Howie, and I have got a friend in US. His name is Nick Curto. He's also into UFO and all of these things. So I mean, I had been speaking to these guys as well, because I had an experience as well. And I wasn't abducted, but I saw something that did not look human. And that was, my starting point where I became curious about this topic and subject. Now, my question to you, Craig, is there are a lot of people who have experiences, who have experienced these things, whether it is extraterrestrial or some interdimensional being. I would want to know what is the reason why these things are not into mainstream and these things are not accepted, and people just accept it that okay, it's there. Why disclosure is not happening? Why is there so much of confusion, you know disinformation, campaigns happening? Why? I mean, why not, just let it go and, let people, talk about it, and let's live in harmony? Why do we have to conceal, hide, fake, and, run campaigns and gaslight people into doubting their own experience and feeling? What are your thoughts, Craig? What's stopping?
Well, this began way back, even before Eisenhower, because people were seeing flying saucers, especially when Roswell crashed. It went out into the papers, and then they did the retraction. So the disinformation began very early on. And then the powers that be decided, well, let's make fun of it. So they started going and weeding out with cartoons, making fun of it, with some movies were funded to make fun of it. They started putting people on the payroll that would go out and debunk every single UFO or extraterrestrial incident, so that now the public ridicules it, right? But we're now in a different age, the age of cell phones. And everyone captures amazing craft, amazing extraterrestrial pictures, amazing interdimensional beings. I caught interdimensional being on with a Minolta camera. I mean, it's amazing. I put it in the back of the book. Right, by the way, it's called I think I called it the something alien, right? And I told the story there. But even people in governmental, even in the CIA, even in other places, they too are having experiences, right? And they did try it by taking all of these various people from different parts of the government and starting to the stars, which, had the brightest science minds and all of those things, also with Lou Elizondo. And then they sort of broke apart, and Lou is sort of fielding all of this. And they released a little bit about the Tic Tac. Let's see how the world reacts to that, which they reacted very well, right? And those are still being talked about today. And there's more whistleblowers. They just had another citizens hearing in Washington, D.C., where all people within the government in high positions are coming out and saying that this is true. I know this. I saw this. And but then you have to think about, okay, so who is the ultimate power behind the government that's saying, no, you can't have disclosure? Who is that? Is it a group of people? Is it corporate America? Is it corporate world? Is it there to keep their thumbs, to keep us dumbed down, to keep our thumbs on them? We'll just let them not believe anything. But you have to then rethink, okay, do they all of a sudden come out and say, by the way, it's real and it's been happening since the 40s, and sorry, the world would be enraged. The world would be enraged. So they do have dilemmas about it. But as you can see, they're releasing a little bit at a time. Other countries have come forward and said it, right? But little by little, it is coming out. And with books like the ET Almanac, that exploded on the scene, the publisher thought it was just going to be a book that did okay, and it just blew up. And so yeah, I mean, that's my assessment of it. But, we know that there are brilliant people out there like Steve Bassett, Paul Hynek, who was J. Allen Hynek's son,
Yep.
also,
Mm-hmm.
is big into disclosure. I'm part of the Hollywood Disclosure Group. So we do have meetings and do everything that we can to get as much information out there to the public. But, people say the same thing to me. How come I've never heard of this? I said, because you never looked,
Mm-hmm. So,
right?
Craig, are you saying, Craig, I mean, are you saying that humans, us, we are not yet ready for disclosure, and that's the reason the information is not
No,
being disclosed? Are you
no,
saying that?
I'm not saying that. I
Mm-hmm.
think the world is ready for it. But what's going to happen is there will be a backlash if the government comes out and just spills the beans, right? Because the people will be angry that it was withheld from them for so long. So there's a timing to everything. And so I think their method is releasing things a little bit at a time. They are working really hard with Congress to bring things forward. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
they're constantly, if anybody's interested in disclosure, definitely look up Stephen Bassett. Stephen Bassett
Mm-hmm.
is, one of the greats who is tirelessly, I think he's between 75 and 80 now, tirelessly worked. He is on a plane somewhere all the time doing disclosure, always meeting with people in Washington, always doing things to push this forward. So, and there are many others as well that are doing that, but I know that Bassett's been doing it the longest.
Mm-hmm. I have been, following the work of Mr. Bigelow. I mean, Skinwalker Ranch. Now I think it's being run by Brandon Fugel,
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken.
that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. So now he's like, researching in that area. Um, and it's fascinating. There are a lot of people and a lot of whistleblowers. I mean, you talked about the Congress. I mean, I do, see all those hearings, where they are coming forward and talking about, covert operations, how they had recovered and reverse engineered the craft. I mean, it's really fascinating. It's almost like a rabbit hole, once
Yeah,
you get in and,
exactly.
you just keep going in and in and in. Now, Craig, uh, there's an interesting question that I would want you to, share your views. Craig, don't you think that finding extraterrestrial life, whether it's aliens or UFOs, don't you think they can shake the very pillars, of religion and traditional spiritual beliefs and how the society is constructed, law and order? I personally feel that. I mean, that could be one of the reasons they really don't want to shake those pillars of belief,
Well, a
faith,
lot of the
religion.
religious,
Mm,
yes. Also, a lot of the religious, and that's partly also due to the government, because if if that were to come out, right, and we all know that Christ, for instance, said there were many mansions in my Father's world. We
mhm.
know that Christ didn't originate here. He originated from somewhere else. So that thought alone, I remember for me, when I was in my mid 20s, was sort of shattered my belief system, because I had to start thinking differently. because
Mhm.
I was now shifting more into spirituality and out of religion. You know, religion gives you structure. Don't do this, don't do
Mhm.
that, don't do this. And you know, some religions have whoever created that religion, right, has different things about do's and don'ts, and some of them are, you know, not uh I don't even know the right word to say, but you know, not really
Mhm.
copacetic. They're kind of ridiculous. But
Mhm.
the thing is that I know, for instance, when Star Wars came out, a lot of people who were religious became more spiritual because they were like, oh, the Force. I believe in the Force, right? So that happened. So I think gradually things will shift over. The younger generation is really forging forth, and those that are being born into starseed parents or very advanced parents, they're coming in stronger and stronger. More of their soul essence can come in. And I have met with children that are so brilliant they will blow your mind. They literally asked me hundreds of questions and then started showing me all the things they were going to build when they were adults to help the earth. And I literally was like, these are beings from somewhere else. These are higher beings. I mean, it's just amazing.
Mhm. Now, coming to your book, Craig, bringing 82 alien species to life is no small feat. Trust me. I mean, it's really difficult. Now, I would want to know which species proved the most difficult to portray on screen, and how did you approach all of those challenges?
Well, I mean, the ET Almanac book is what the publisher wanted. They wanted a thumbnail review of the race, right? When
Mhm.
I went to make the documentary, which took us 3 years to make and film all of the, you know, all of the testimonials, which are, by the way, from the real contactees I used in the book. Some of them have pictures of the beings that they're in contact with. All of those pictures are in the book as well. And, but, the most difficult, I would say, now just like humans, there are so many offsets of the gray species, right? So I've sort of categorized, if you're going to say a gray alien, that's going to be a negative connotation of the ones that are not, that are doing the abductions that are not given permission to do, right? There are other grays that are been given permission to do, like for instance, a lot of them come from the reticuli section in the universe, Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2. So they prefer to be called Zeta humans. And some of them are small, some of them are little, some of them are really tall, some of them are
Mhm.
white, some of them are brown, some of them are red, um, some are milk white, and um, and a lot of them, even though their eyes are this big, they're still human eyes like we have. But what they do is they get this film that they put over and they sew it in because it's actually having, it's like they're wearing sunglasses at all times. So like we would use transitionals, they would semi be transitionals for them as well.
Mhm.
So the gray species really, you know, there were a lot of them. Humans were the ones who were really, you know, grays were coming way back in the days of Egypt, the Aztecs, all of that is proven through history, etchings on walls inside pyramids, um, zillions of rocks from the Aztecs showing they would carve in ships and what the aliens look like. I have a friend who has a collection of over 250 of them. They have all been carbon dated back to the period. And but in the 50s, it was the humans that were coming from various planets around our solar system, because they live on the interior of the planets, not the exterior. So they sort of terrace it like a ship, right? And they have many different kinds of cool things, like synchrotron skies. So you could be on every floor you're on, you would look up into the sky and it would look like an infinite sky, like you were standing on the outside of a planet. But one of the reasons they do that is so that they don't get all of the rays and the ultraviolet rays and the sun flares and all those things that happen on the surface, because that's what ages them. So they keep these resonation fields contained within, that keeps their cells constantly rejuvenated and keeps them looking very, very young. I mean, Valiant Thor is an immortal being. Nobody knows how old he is. I know one person on his ship is over 500 years old. I've seen her. She's come to me in my mind to show me what she looks like. She looks like she's 35. Right? So it's, it's fascinating.
Craig, critics out there, skeptics, would argue that these species, might be work of imagination, because there is no physical evidence. Let's see things, from their lens. How do you respond to those who say there's no verifiable proof of extraterrestrial species? And what, in your view, constitutes evidence in this field?
Well, I think evidence would be photographic evidence, interviewing some of the I wouldn't call them grays, but the beings with the big eyes that were captured. A couple of them were interviewed, and they gave lots and lots of information about the universe. One of those people was Clifford Stone, who I knew, and he's passed on, but he told me his personal experiences in interacting also with the being. Here's the other thing. If you met someone that was off planet, you would feel it. Your energy would know that they are not from here. You would totally feel it. Now, I've felt that a few times in my life and seen it. As in the thing about Valiant Thor, Dr. Frank had so much information about him. I had dreams, or if something had to be relayed, he would come, or his vice commanders. They also speak to me telepathically as well when needed. But the thing is, for proof in Valiant Thor, is I had many people over the years. One was a CIA man, and he said, look, I'm only going to tell you it's true. I can't tell you much more, right? Then I met somebody high up in the government, and he flew out and he took me to lunch. And after I talked about everything, he said the same thing. He said, just going to tell you, it's true. And I said, I know it's true. So I think he was just feeling me out to see what I knew. Really why I like to bring this information about is so we can heal the past, so we can move forward with the future. right?
Mhm.
Heal the past of everything that people had to cover up. There are also two ladies that, when they were very young in the 60s, met Valiant Thor. One met him twice in a week, and one met him once. And she said that Dr. Frank was with him. So those were a couple. Another one is a woman that was part of Dr. Frank's group, and I interviewed her extensively. And although she never saw Valiant Thor, she did see some of the vice commanders or other crew members sitting in the audience that stuck out like a sore thumb, she said. And she
Mhm.
said, is very interesting because we arrived at the hotel in the morning, my daughter, husband, and I, and we saw Dr. Frank, and he was clean shaven. And when he appeared that night for his first talk before our dinner, he had a full beard.
Wow. That
Don't
must be
even know how to explain that one,
Uh-huh.
right? Don't
Wow.
even know how
Mhm.
to explain. So there's lots of things, but I say to people that are skeptics, I mean, I'm still skeptic, and I even think, when I tell my story, people are going to be very skeptical about it. But if they actually read my books and see the highly amount of spiritual information in there, especially the autobiography of an extraterrestrial saga book series, there's 4 books, um, they will totally be blown away, and their spiritual elevation will definitely happen reading those books. And
Mhm.
Dr. Frank used to say, if it doesn't sit with you well today, put it away on a shelf and revisit it when you would like to revisit it, and see how you are then. When all of this started happening to me, I used to throw giant UFO parties in my one little bedroom apartment. I would have 100 people crammed in there. I made spaghetti and salad. I had a
Wow.
ufologist come over with a VHS tape, because that's what we had back then. And
Mhm.
he would tell everybody about the latest sightings and would show them. And then I would tell people of my experience, a lot of them in the business, by the way, actors, actresses, agents, managers. Um, and then several years down the line, a lot of those friends, I mean, they never said anything to me like, I think you're nuts, or whatever their feelings were at the time, they kept them in. But they said, it's interesting. It was over time hearing you talk, it brought me spirituality in a way that I never expected. And now I think just like you. And I said, well, hopefully not just like me, because we all have our own experiences, and you will have your own
Mhm.
experiences as well.
Mhm.
I mean, would I love to meet Valiant Thor and his crew in person and shake their hand? I sure would. Everybody would. But that hasn't happened. But I still have an inner relationship with them when I'm doing my work, right? It's
Mhm.
guidance for the work. So,
Mhm.
um, so it's, and I always ask people if they believe in God, and they say yes most of the time. And I said, then can you prove God exists? And that's what we hear is crickets, because you can't. But when you become
True.
spiritually elevated, you know that everyone is God. Everyone came from the same primordial atom. And even though we are the many within the one, in learning experiences and physical bodies, we really are the uniqueness, the source of the all. or of God, or however you want to put it in that respect. And then each religions and things has its own master teachers and things as well. So, everyone's just on a different path. So,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe their path is to not believe anything for a full lifetime. That could be their path.
True. Craig, you've mentioned testimonies play a huge role, in your research. I would want to know how much weight do witness accounts carry in shaping your narrative, and how do you decide which ones are credible and which ones are not? What is the filtration process? How do you filter out the truth?
Well, first of all, I think the Clarion race, which is a human race, they just look a little different than us. This is actually one of the beings. Her name is Nelfa. So a lot of these beings have these very round faces with these beautifully shaped eyes, petite mouths, and noses. Nelfa she deals with astral biology and chronoastronomy. So she works between Clarion, Earth, Mars, and Venus, and she works the equilibrium between the astral and the physical. So when you have a contactee like Maurizio Cavallo, who is Italian, who lives in a remote Italian village, we had to go there to film him. I had read up on him, and he has photographic evidence, but all of the things of why they were here and what they did, to me, fascinated me. And he talks all about that in the documentary, which is on Vimeo too, by the way, if people want to rent it or buy it. If they want a DVD, they can go to the website under my name. But so that for me, he was very credible, and other ufologists also said that he was very credible. Excuse me, as well. Some of the other ones there are in Brazil, the Alpha Centaurians, which are Nordic beings, very tall, blonde Nordics. Some of them have Asian-shaped eyes, by the way, and some have normal-shaped eyes, like American-shaped eyes. And there have been 4 accounts of various men throughout the years that have all had contact with a between 8 and 9 foot being named Antaral. And so Antaral, in the book, Ricardo Gonzalez, who has met him, other beings on his craft, and his wife Ivica, was the information for the book. And then Sixto Paz Wells was the information. I interviewed him for the documentary because he's been on their craft over 100 times. And although they did try to take pictures of Antaral and inside the ship, the energy is so high that nothing really shows up but blips of light, right? So, and at one point, Ricardo Gonzalez and a friend of mine attended this, got a group of 50 people together, said Antaral is going to fly the ship over. They went to Mount Shasta, out into this giant plateau where it was open grass, and then there's forest all around. And so they did a wonderful meditation to call Antaral in. Then they started singing and dancing, and this kind of energy brings them closer to you. They will come and they will appear, right? And so you can do that almost anywhere. If they're around, they will. And so then it was time that Entourage had picked out 5 or 6 people from the group to go into the forest and meet him. My friend was not one of them, but everyone else was told to go back to base camp. But my friend stayed in the field and watched from about 100-yard distance. Of course, the ship came over when everyone was around, lit up the whole forest. And then my friend, who was watching from afar, saw this big light open up in the actual forest. And he said 15 minutes after, everyone started walking out one by one. And he said they looked like what Moses must have looked like when he saw the burning bush.
Wow.
And so, and a ufologist was present for that one. And it totally freaked her out, like freaked her out. So, so that's another reason why they just don't appear, because if your energy is not, spiritually elevated and acclimated, it will be tough for you to make it through, because your body will probably ring with chills and want to pass out because you're not sure what you're seeing, because it's beyond your reality until you
Mm-hmm.
can get yourself used to it.
Mm-hmm. True. Craig, you've said your mission is not just about ETs, but about raising consciousness.
Yes.
How do you see the connection between extraterrestrial presence and humanity's spiritual or psychological evolution?
Well, the Starseed program's been going on for a very long time. And so that means those are fully conscious beings who are being incarnated in through parents throughout the world. And at a certain point, they have a wake-up call. They have a spiritual awakening, and they start working on their spirituality very, very fast, and they start rising above the collective consciousness, and others in their area will be attracted to them, and they attracted to them. And then the energy starts moving up more and more and more and more. And if you really look at where we were in the 70s and to where we are now, spiritually speaking, we have really come a far distance, right? Not talking about politics or anything that's going on in the world. I'm talking about personal raising of your own consciousness. That should be the only thing that star seeds and beings who want to help the planet should be doing, unless, of course, they're into ecological things or what have you. The beings are not here to change anyone. They're not here to say, look at our point of view. They're here to share what information they have, because they've been through everything we're going through eons ago. And they feel a kinship to us because they did leave their genetics on this planet throughout, from the beginning of time. So what's interesting is, if you really want to look at it, we are all basically extraterrestrial hybrids living on this planet.
Wow. Yeah, it does make sense. It does make sense.
Yeah.
I personally feel, Craig, I mean, in the past, paleo contact was recorded as religion. A religion was made out of it. So and so came and, so and so imparted this knowledge, this tablet, and XYZ. And they build a religion around it. And with time, it's there, it's a part of, who we are. And now I see, the same thing is happening, but with different names and faces. And,
Right.
Now it's UFO disclosure. Now it is, being a star seed or an indigo child, being a psychic or a medium. You can see a lot of things, now. which was considered, a taboo back then, because,
Yeah.
I'm a student of demonology as well. And when I explore such subjects, I see how, fortune telling, or any, individual with, some kind of, ability, was just outrightly labeled as a witch and was
Right.
burnt on the stake.
Yeah.
And now I see there is so much of openness now. I mean, I have got
Yes.
friends who are witches, I mean, who do good spells, and I mean, it's an art and a domain in its own way. So I personally see that, there is a kind of a revolution that is happening now,
Right.
a kind of a
Yeah.
churning. The things which was considered taboo and labeled, 500 years back, is now again, being seen in a new light. And now it's like more acceptable. Like, we have, I mean, of course, there are fanatics around. I mean, those who call it abomination and XYZ. There are those folks as well. But now there is more openness. I think it's because of technology, internet, people like you and others in the field.
Yes.
I mean, things are different now. But yes, I see. I mean, maybe I might be wrong, but there can be an individual who will, come and say that these are, pagans, and these are demon worshippers. I have seen, some of, these priests and, church heads, when I discuss about these subjects, they say these are not good things to discuss, because you might have inclination towards, satanic things, and it's bad to talk about these things. The book is given to you, just read it and believe in it, and don't question. I personally feel the foundation of religion is, to turn off your, critical thinking, to turn off your mind in general, and just believe it, not ask questions. But yeah, I mean, things are different. I mean, where do you see, us 10 years from now? I mean, will the disclosure happen? Will we be, a civilization, of different beings and different species and interstellar, beings living together and
Yeah.
having a good
Yeah.
life? What are your thoughts, Craig?
Yes, that will definitely happen. They are looking forward to that. The
Mm-hmm.
beings, the extraterrestrials, are looking forward to bringing this planet back into the fold.
Mm-hmm. Craig, you've already made such a significant contribution through your books and now film and documentary. What's next for you? I mean, before we conclude today's, podcast, I would want to know what's next, for you. And do you envision, continuing this journey with, more future volumes, films, or perhaps, waiting for
Yes,
new revelations yet to come? What are your thoughts?
yes, I've written two more books to my book series, which are prequels, which are
Mm-hmm.
not released yet, and I'm finishing the seventh book now, which will probably take me to the end of the year, and then I'm going to rebrand them. I rewrote, books 1 through 4 as well, just updating them. And so then there'll be 7 volumes as well. I've done all the accompanying artwork to it, which I think I'm going to just put in a separate book so people can get that and go, oh, these are the beings in book 1, these are the beings in book 2, et cetera, et cetera. So that's, excuse me, my main focus. And like I said, I'm gearing up to make Stranger at the Pentagon, excuse me, the feature film, and get that out there. So again, millionaires, call me, call me, call me.
Yes, I'm going to mention the links in the description. Guys, please, show love. All those enthusiasts out there, who are exploring the subject and topic, please reach out to him, support him, and show some love, and, help him, with his mission. Craig, before I conclude, now there is an interesting question, and I won't be, holding you for long. Craig, what are your thoughts? I have heard a lot of psychics, a lot of mediums, a lot of spiritual individuals referring Earth as a prison planet. And I mean, I mean, I don't agree to that. What are your thoughts? Are we in a prison planet, and that's the reason, all of us are prisoners, all those ETs, us, our soul, and we are interacting? Is it like a prisoner interaction kind of a
Not
thing
not
happening?
in the sense that you're thinking. There are prison planets, but people say that about Earth is
Yeah.
because we're basically, the population is stuck here. I mean, yes, they've gone to the moon, they've gone to Mars. I'm sure they've gone other places that we don't know about, but that's what a lot of people reference this being a prison planet. But once, and the other thing about it is because there's so much culture here, there's so many different races from all over the universe that originally came here and lived, and that now, various offshoots of that. And by the way, there are still extraterrestrials that are seeding this planet as well. So there are still lots of hybrid children being born, but you just don't know that they're hybrids and that type of thing. And the whole of the planet, when it shifts over, then it will become a planet where you can then go and take a tour of the moon, or you can go and take a tour of Mars, and you can hear the real history of it. You could even probably tour Agartha, the inner Earth as
Hmm.
well, and really hear about the true history of Earth instead of what has been said throughout the years when people weren't quite sure and maybe made stuff up.
Well, Craig, thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to, I'm already getting all the different topic ideas now, to again
Ah,
invite you over and, extract
yes,
every bit of
absolutely.
information and, whatever you have, I really want you to tell me and tell my viewers. So, Craig, thank you for today. And I'm looking forward to see you again.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed it very much. Thanks, Sarah.